Hello and welcome back to Serpent Sunday. As always, I am your host, Morgan. Today, we're going to talk about Western Diamondback rattlesnakes. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, wait, Morgan, why are we going to talk about this specific rattlesnake when there are so many rattlesnake species out there? I mean, these guys aren't even considered endangered. Heck, they're one of the least concerned species. Now, my answer to that is, where I grew up, I remember seeing these guys all the time. Now, yeah, they were one of several species that occurred in my own literal backyard, but these are the ones that I remember seeing the most, and I think they're beautiful and misunderstood. So, let's get started here. Western Diamondback rattlesnakes can be found in desert, scrubland, and chaparral all across the southwestern parts of the United States, extending down into the central areas of Mexico. They're going to be a fairly plump snake, ranging from 4 to 6 feet on average. They have a brown coloration with a very pronounced diamond pattern on their back, which is kind of where their name came from. But besides that, they have a very pronounced black and white band pattern along their tail leading up to that infamous rattle of theirs. And they do tend to have some darker markings on their eyes. These snakes can live 20 or more years, and they don't begin breeding until they get to around 3 years of age. Now, at this point, the males do participate in fairly dramatic combat dances where they'll wrap around each other and try to get their heads above the other one until one of the males backs off. And once they do breed, the female is going to give birth to 10 to 20 live young that are encased in an egg membrane. Now, the way they accomplish this is basically the eggs are incubated inside the female snake, so when they are born into the world, they are all ready to go and there's no more incubation period after that. However, these 10 to 20 young will sometimes stay with the mother for a couple hours to a day. However, there's not a whole lot of parental care from that part on. The young are essentially on their own after that. And these little baby snakes are all ready to go and equipped with that infamous venom. Their specific venom is a hemotoxin, meaning it attacks the blood of their prey species, as opposed to a neurosystem. This venom is going to be injected through 2 hollow fangs that are similar to the needles that they'll use in a syringe at your doctor's office. Now, the cool thing about these fangs is that if they are damaged, the snake is entirely able to replace them. So unlike our teeth, which if we lose an adult teeth, that's it. Like, we've got to get a fake to replace it. They are perfectly capable of essentially growing a new fang. And the other cool thing about their venom, since it is kind of costly in terms of energy for them to make, adults are able to control the amount of venom they inject. And it's uncertain exactly when they start gaining this control, so there's data that suggests they can do it as soon as they're born, and some that suggests that no, it's going to take a little bit longer until they're considered an actual juvenile. And moving on from here, they're a fairly reactive species, which is not necessarily a bad thing because they do have that infamous rattle to tell creatures when they are coming up on them and when they are feeling threatened. They really do prefer to run versus fight because, like we said before, that venom is costly for them. They don't necessarily want to waste it on something that they are not going to eat in the near future. But They are a solitary species for most of the year. However, when they overwinter and hibernate, they can be found in small to large groups depending on where in their range they are. If it's an area where the winters are longer and colder, it's going to be a larger group huddled in maybe a small rodent burrow or some cracks between some big rocks. And they do this to conserve warmth and get through those cold months until they can emerge again in the spring to start the process of eating rodents and breeding and getting ready for the next winter all over again. Western Diamondback rattlesnakes do provide numerous benefits to people as well. They eat primarily rodent species that can carry diseases or hinder the agricultural industry by being pests. And their venom has a medical use, specifically for anti-venom, which aids in the treatment of people who have unfortunately been bitten and need a little bit of life-saving help. But besides this, they are a species that is fairly easy to breed and raise in captivity, so they are a common rattlesnake species in educational programs that either help spread awareness of snakes or provide some sort of wholesome entertainment. And historically, they are a species that was fairly important for some foundations of Native American culture and lore. And because they're not a threatened species, there's a fairly lucrative market for specifically their skins and meat products. Now, there are several myths that I would like to address that surround not just the Western Diamondback rattlesnake, but rattlesnakes in general. First up, you can tell how old it is by counting the number of rattles it has on its tail. No. No, you cannot. While it is true that they do add rattle every time they shed multiple times a year, and they also lose their oldest rattles periodically as they go through life. It's just not possible to tell how old the snake is just by counting its rattle. The next myth is babies are more deadly than adults, or alternatively, babies have a more toxic venom than adults. That is also a complete wives' tale. Baby rattlesnakes have the exact same venom as their adult counterparts. Now, adults are more likely to be able to control how much venom they inject upon a bite, and they are also able to inject no venom, giving you what's called a dry bite. However, there's no real evidence to suggest that if you're bitten by a baby versus an adult, you're any more likely to suffer adverse effects. It doesn't matter what age the snake was. Go to the hospital if you're bitten and take any rattlesnake bite as serious. Myth number 3. They always rattle when you come upon them before they bite. Now, usually, yes, this is going to be true. However, like any animal, they can be taken by surprise, and if they don't notice that you're there before you step on them, they're gonna bite because they're not gonna have time to warn you that they're there. So this myth is not true just based on the fact that things happen. They're not always going to notice you before you step on them or before you unfortunately interact with them and scare them. And our final myth today is that they're aggressive and they will chase you. This is just not accurate. Like I've said before in previous videos, snakes are not aggressive, they are defensive. If a snake is coming at you, that means you're blocking its way of escape. They would much rather get away. They are not apex predators, and they have no inherent aggressiveness towards humans. Now, in the rattlesnake's case, they're most likely going to rattle and hope you go away, so they can also get away and hide. And this myth does tend to persist just because we see it in some older media tropes, and the fear of snakes is so ingrained in certain areas of our social culture. All right, so I hope that you might have a little bit more of an appreciative feeling towards the beautiful western diamondback rattlesnake, and you can go ahead and share the rebuttals to these common myths now. As always, all my references are going to be down below in the description. If you want any more Serpent Sundays, make sure you like and subscribe, ring that bell. If you want to add anything, make sure you comment down below. And while you're at it, why don't you go check out thereptilegoth.com for the accompanying article, and maybe hang around and check out what else I have to offer there. All right, I'll see you next Sunday, guys.